Good morning. I'm Matt Driskill, editor of Asian Aviation Magazine and AsianAviation.com. Welcome to the latest In Conversation, sponsored by Metrojet of Hong Kong. Today we are speaking with Carst Lindeboom, Sales Director for Asia Pacific at the lessor TrueNoord. Carst, welcome to In Conversation. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Matt. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you. I know, first of all, you're in quarantine right now. You just came back from the Netherlands, so you're spending a lovely 14 days at a Singapore hotel with bad food. So I feel sorry for you. My wife had to do that, and it's not very much fun, but we're glad you're with us today. First of all, tell us a little bit about your company, TrueNoord. You're a leasing company based in Amsterdam, but you've got operations all over the place. I think Singapore is actually a fairly new office for the company. What prompted you guys to set up shop here?
Yeah, first let me tell you a little bit about TrueNoord indeed. We are a leasing company specialized in regional aircraft, so we focus on aircraft 50 to 150 seats. We've been founded already in 2002, and in 2015 and 16 new shareholders came in. 2017 we changed our name to TrueNoord, and that's where we started building up a new fleet, actually building up the team. So currently we own a fleet of about 50 aircraft, mixed between mainly ATRs and Embraers. We also have a few CRJs and Q400s. And since 2017, when I joined as well, we've grown a team. We've several offices. Our head office is in Amsterdam, where I started as well. And then we have an office in Dublin and in London, where the majority of our shareholders in the beginning were. So I joined in 2017 as the sales director for Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific is a very important region for us. We always had the intention to open shop here, and I started in the first years covering Asia Pacific from Amsterdam, which included a lot of long-haul traveling, of course, but also I found out that this is a really specific market, a market you need to be in. It's a real hands-on market. Actually, it's a great continent, and I really love it. I've covered this continent already in previous jobs as well. And if you want to be successful, you need to be here, basically. You need to speak to the people, you need to meet them, you need to feel the region. So that's why in 2019, early 2019, we decided to move to Asia to limit the long-haul traveling. Although if you want to cover the whole of Asia Pacific, it still requires long-haul traveling. But at least you work mostly in the same time zone. And I think the most important is that you're closer to the market. Then we were a bit thinking about which city to go to, what's the best base for us in Asia. And the debate was really between Hong Kong and Singapore. Hong Kong was very interesting for us. This was all before the political unrest. So we really were enthusiastic about going to Hong Kong, mainly also because that's the stepping stone to China. It's well positioned for North Asia, where our long-term focus is as well. But then again, Singapore is more and more the aviation hub. This is where most of the leasing companies are. This is where the OEMs are. This is also closer to the Southeast Asia and South Asia market, and the Pacific market, including Australia and New Zealand. So in the end, we decided for Singapore, and I think today we're happy that we made that choice, and really comfortable being here and using this as our base in Asia.
Yeah, I love Hong Kong, obviously. I lived there for 10 years and really enjoyed it. It's a great city, although, we could sit here and talk politics all day long about it and what's going on. But Singapore does have a really good aviation infrastructure. You've got all the OEMs and everybody out at Seletar, the engine manufacturers, Rolls-Royce. So it is a good place. Let me ask you a question. Obviously, we all hope that the pandemic would be sort of on the way out the door, but unfortunately, we're not seeing that. You see the outbreaks in India happening and things like that. So we're really still in this horrible pandemic that has hammered aviation. You were talking about long haul travel. I mean, it's just it's hard to get on a plane to go anywhere long haul these days. How did that affect the company? I've talked to other lessors, I've talked with manufacturers, I've talked with airlines, but people, the manufacturers, the Boeings, the Embraers, and everybody, and the lessors as well, they've had what they call difficult conversations with customers about deferrals and about deals that were in the works prior to the pandemic, and then all of a sudden the bottom dropped out of the market. Have you had to have difficult conversations with some customers? I mean, people say, we're all in the same boat, so we're not just going to cut off a customer, we need to work with them. Is that what you're finding happening in the industry?
Yeah, well, we definitely had our difficult conversations, but let me first put this a little bit in perspective. We already reached 3 million deaths due to COVID. So I think, first of all, I would also, on behalf of TrueNoord, I would pay our respect to those the people who died because of COVID, and our thoughts and prayers are with their families. Coming back to your question, yeah, we really have our fair share of difficult conversations as well, but I think overall we're doing pretty well. So TrueNoord is benefiting from a strong airline portfolio. So compared to our peers, we're performing well. The majority of our lessees still are able to pay us with or without government support, and we are able to perform towards our lenders, which is I think for a leasing company a very important milestone. And also I think that's also due to our strong shareholder base, and we have strong shareholders who are behind us and determined to weather this crisis. On the other hand, we did have difficult conversation. To be honest, we still have. So there's airlines struggling, and it's clear why. This is an external factor which caused this all. So we're understanding. We need to be understanding. We're on the same boat. We need to find a solution together. And we did find solutions. We did find a lot of solutions with those airlines. We did sign deferral agreements, which are being met or not sometimes. It's clear that nobody had a crystal ball in April last year. And when we made plans for the coming 6 months, it turned out that COVID took a bit longer and still there. And in fact, it's even surging. So we're not there yet. And we need to adjust and amend and find a solution together with them. But I think, again, overall, we're doing pretty well. And I think that's also due to we didn't really go into a lease that easy. We're pretty picky on which airlines we choose. We do a thorough study. We look at their business plan. We look at their financials. We need to have a good feeling about their management teams. And that clearly pays off. So again, I think 20-30% of our lessees do have difficult conversations with us, but the majority is doing relatively okay.
Just operationally speaking as well, I mean, it's even if you sign the lease and people want to take delivery of the asset, or you're taking something's coming off lease and you want to take possession of the asset, it's hard to do everything that you've got to do to recover that asset, let's say, because there's inspections that have to be done, there's paperwork that has to be filed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I've talked to some lessors, and they've been able to do workarounds where they, instead of sending in a team to look at the asset, they might try to hire somebody locally, but in some jurisdictions, you just don't have the qualified people in those jurisdictions. And you can only do so much virtually, online. how do you deal with that where you're taking, let's say you're taking back an asset that's come off lease, uh, just physically, how do you handle all the logistics of doing that?
Yeah, that's an issue we haven't faced before. That's a really COVID-related issue, and where we also had those cases where we couldn't send people into a country, and then you need to rely on either a local hire, a local consultant, and then the question is, can you trust the person? Do you know that person? Do you have any track record with them? But also you rely on the previous operator. So let's assume, and we didn't have any unfriendly repossessions or so. So it's in a friendly atmosphere, and the previous operator is understanding. And although they usually really want to have this aircraft off their deck, they understand we need a bit more time, and they provide storage maintenance. They provide the camo services. For us to buy a bit more time and to find the right person and to get ferry flight crew in, it all takes time. So, as an example, we had to take back an aircraft from Taiwan, which was really closed border at that time. The previous operator, Mandarin Airlines, was really eager to get this aircraft off their apron, but on the other hand, they understood that we were limited in possibilities. So they really stepped in and helped us a lot. We're really thankful of that. But in the end, we found local consultants. So we hired 2 local consultants who helped us in the repossession, but also to get this aircraft outside of the country. And in the end, we found ferry flight crew to take the aircraft to Clark. We don't have in Philippines. We don't have any staff in Philippines, of course, and that was also in lockdown. So also there we needed to hire a local consultant. But in the end, we did manage. There is a good network of local engineers, and through our network we were able to find those. And I think what you also see is that good skilled engineers who got laid off with their airlines due to COVID now become a third-party independent consultant, and that's where we also had some contacts already. So.
Okay, no, that's interesting. Let's focus a little more on TrueNoord itself. You're not the biggest lessor out there, of course, but what I'm interested in is you focus on regional planes, the smaller jets, turboprops, the ATRs you mentioned, which are perfect for this area of the world, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, the Philippines, places like that. Is there a reason that you're focused on that rather than lease? I mean, is that sort of a niche in the market that you've got to yourself?
Yeah, it is. It's a real niche indeed. It's usually, not always, but usually it's a real different customer profile. So we deal with different airlines than the main lessors do. And that's really our niche. That's what we like. That's what we've always done. And most of our staff has always done. And that's what we're good at. So it's different airline type, different aircraft types you need to be familiar with. So we always said we do everything but Airbus and Boeing. In the meantime, also Airbus is in this space, and Boeing was looking at it, which I think in the Airbus example is working out well for them. So yeah, we always been in this niche, which is a bit of a higher risk niche, but also it gives you a higher return. So usually the returns are better. The lease rent factor are higher than in the narrow bodies, which is a really crowded market. In a usual RFP, we only have, let's say, 10 to 20 bidders, where on a narrow body it can even be up to 100 bidders. So that's really eroding the yields, of course. And what we also see is that sometimes larger lessors step into the space, but they do place a forward order, a few ATRs or Embraers, and then later on they see that it takes the same amount of effort to remarket a narrow body, a wide body, or a regional. An ATR 72 takes the same amount of effort. In fact, sometimes even more. So we accept that. That's our business profile. That's also where we get awarded for, and that's also where we're good at. But you see for the larger lessors that they tend to stay away, and I think we're happy in our niche. It's working out well for us, and we have no intentions to broaden our view to also the narrow and the wide bodies. We will stick to this.
Well, like I said, I think it's interesting, and also it's sort of, I think it's fortunate for your company because the domestic flying, within Indonesia or within the Philippines or some of the countries with large domestic networks, we're going to see that come back faster than the long haul travel that we talked about before. Boeing came out with its market overview, talked about Southeast Asia not too long ago. I've spoke with ATR as well. Those guys are really focused on domestic and regional. You've got places like India as well that's focused on, it's got its UDAN project with regional connectivity. Does that give you a good outlook for the future? I mean, putting the pandemic aside for a second, is that what you're focused on?
Yeah, I think that's indeed what we're focused on. We know that regionals are there to stay. I mean, there's no, for many destinations, there's no other alternative than a turboprop, for instance, due to the runway distance or due to the small city pairs. So I think on the long term, it will not be the majority of the market. The majority of the market will still be the narrow bodies. We understand that, but in our niche, it's there to stay, and it's projected to grow. And on the short term, coming back to COVID, I think what we've seen is that domestic markets have performed the best in these COVID times. So. Which is of course logic. The borders are closed. There's only domestic travel possible. I even saw the CEO of United Airlines today mentioning that the leisure destinations, domestic leisure destinations in the US, are even performing better than 2019 levels because people are just the demand is still there. They still want to go on holiday. And they have no other choice than to go on holiday domestic. We saw this in other countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Taiwan. We saw the same. And we also see that airlines are more focusing on right sizing. So they tend to pick the right aircraft for the right route at the right time. So in these times where the city pairs tend to be a bit smaller because the demand is smaller, you see airlines restarting with their regional jets. KLM has operated 85% of the Europe network with their E-jets and not with their Boeings. And Korean Air has restarted the routes with their A320s. So this is a short-term effect, but we think that as airlines are more focusing internal and more focusing on the domestic markets and short regional markets where borders still open, they tend to look at new city pairs. They tend to look at going from a hub and spoke to a point-to-point network, and that's something which is there to stay. So more and more point-to-point network will create more and more regional aircraft demand. So I think that in that sense, we think that we were already bullish, of course, on the regional space, and COVID even helped this, and we see a long-term effect of that.
Okay, Carst, let me. We're going to take a quick break here in just a minute, but along that same line with your answer just now. Is this the time for airline? The old saying, "Never let a good crisis go to waste." And we're seeing people like Rex in Australia, which is actually sort of getting into the space of Virgin Australia and Qantas. They started out mainly sort of as the smaller regional carrier. Do you see more airlines coming in, or are they using this time as a way like Rex to say, well, we think now's the time that we can come in and give them some competition? Or is it still sort of too dangerous a time to either expand your regional routes or things like that?
Yeah, I think airlines are benefiting in different ways from this crisis. There's a good saying, never waste a crisis. And you see airlines finding different ways of benefiting from this. Like Rex is doing, like Alliance, also in Brisbane, is doing, buying, that's a really bullish move, buying 30 regional jets while they still have their fleet, so they're basically almost doubling their fleet. But yeah, they're buying at the right time. And that's only possible if you're going healthy into this crisis. And you have still a decent amount of demand, of course, like in Australian market. Other than that, you don't see many airlines doing those kind of very bullish moves. Maybe also because they're unable to finance that. But you do see airlines benefiting from this crisis by renegotiating lease agreements. Like with us or with other leasing companies, it's clear why. I mean, it's clear that they're in the midst of a crisis. They cannot pay us, so we need to find a short-term solution. But they also try to get out of this crisis stronger and negotiate a lease amendment, which is a bit further, negotiating lease extensions with lower lease rentals. So in the end, they will get out of this crisis leaner and meaner and ready to fight the competition. And then there's those airlines like Singapore Airlines who don't do that. They don't have any or not many renegotiated lease agreements because they're still performing. They're still paying the lease rentals, and they will get out of this crisis not benefiting from that. But on the other hand, they've proven to be the strongest credit there is. Singapore Airlines getting out of this, getting into the crisis, they were a very healthy company and a very strong credit, and every leasing company would really like to do business with them, same as the banks. Going out of this is even more so. So I think on the long term, they will also really benefit from this as they really performed during the crisis.
Okay. Carst, we need to take a quick break here. We've got to hear from our sponsor, Metrojet of Hong Kong. We'll be right back after this.
We're going to have the crown jewels of Asia, and I promise you we're going to have the nicest and busiest business aviation hangar in the region.
And we're back. We're speaking with Carst Lindeboom. Hope I got that right that time. Sales Director for Asia Pacific at lessor TrueNoord. Just before the break, we were talking about people refleeting a little bit, airlines looking at ways to survive the crisis, to come out of it. Do you see airlines going for newer generation planes, more fuel-efficient planes at this time? Has there been an upsurge in that? What's the story with that?
Yeah, I think this mainly counts for the bigger aircraft.
Right.
I think on the regionals, not so much. There is new generation regionals. It's basically E2 and the A320. But it's not that the regionals are now being parked in deserts like the A380 and the 747s, and there the question is really, will they ever get out of the desert, and will they ever go back into operation? Mainly because if you look at the 380, it cannot compete with the 787 or the A350 for that matter. And the seat costs are just too high. It's better to fly, as the CEO of Qantas said, it's better to fly 2 787s tail to nose than one A380, which is the perfect example. We don't have that on the regionals, and basically there's not that many parked. Yes, there is storage on the regionals as well, but not long-term storage in deserts. It's more short-term storage, waiting for the next customer, and we do already see it pick up. So especially for the ATRs and the E-jets, we really see the demand picking up. And we are remarketing aircraft. We've placed aircraft over the last months, and we see other leasing companies doing the same.
Let me jump in there too, because that goes into my next question. You're seeing a lot of the regionals, the regional jets and the ATRs and things. Is this something? I mean, you talked earlier about you're very comfortable in your niche, which I understand, but I've seen other lessors like BOC Aviation. They're actually growing, and they're adding more product on their books, and you've got top-notch backers, Morgan Stanley, BlackRock, MUFG, I think, when I was looking at your website. Do you have plans to add to your fleet of leased aircraft?
Definitely, yeah. So going back, we managed to build up a fleet of 50 aircraft in a short term, which was a pretty aggressive growth. We were on a growth path, so the plan was to grow further in 2020. COVID slowed us down, so we needed to consolidate. We were happy we just reached that critical mass and were able to weather this storm. But for sure, our intention is to grow further. Our plan was actually to be at this stage around 80 aircraft or so, and then grow further to 100 and more. And we're still on that. That's still our plan, and we were still looking forward to add aircraft. We think that although 2020 we added a few aircraft, 2021 we will add more aircraft again. It's all depending on whether there's any deals to be made, sale and leasebacks with airlines, but mainly also with leasing companies. If there's any leasing company phasing out or trading regional aircraft, you would be interested to look at that. So going forward, yes, our intention is to grow again.
Okay. And we're running a little bit short on time, so I'm going to ask a few questions very quickly. I was reading the other day, this was really interesting to me, and I hadn't seen it before. We all know about engine deals, leasing deals where it's power by the hour and all of that. And it seems like with the pandemic, there seems to be something similar happen where a lessor will do a deal with, say, an airline and maybe this goes back to the difficult conversations we talked about, but the lessor may consider and say, okay, you only pay us when you're flying the plane. Is that something that TrueNoord has done, and can you talk a little bit about that in the industry?
I think I can give you a short answer here. Yes, we've done it, not out of luxury. Short term, this is a nice way of dealing with this. As you don't know, airline cannot predict what is their utilization. We need to be understanding. So we are happy with every utilization. So we we accept the power by the hour. On the long term, this is not a viable solution.
All right.
So on the long term, this model doesn't work to a leasing company like us. It maybe work with older aircraft or engines, but not for us.
Well, and it's you mentioned utilization. I mean, the problem is all the historical models have gone out the window. I mean, you can't say, okay, it's summertime, we're going to have 95% capacity. I mean, Singapore Airlines came out the other day. They're not one of your customers, but they came out the other day. Their capacity, their carriage rate is 90% down compared to where it was the same quarter a year ago or the same month a year ago. So, it is airlines can't. They have nothing to model on because they just have no idea what they're going to be carrying.
No, and then you can say, well, you're still obliged to pay the lease rental because there's a lease agreement, but that's where we need to be understanding. So we find like a middle ground. Okay, then we base it on your utilization, which is very low, so we get a low PBH, and the rest will be deferred until later when you're healthy again and can repay the delta between what you paid in the power by the hour period and the lease rental.
Well, and then obviously I used to cover bankruptcy court back in the States, and it's a lot easier to do a deal up front than try to be a creditor in a bankruptcy court.
Yeah, that's true. We try to stay out of there.
Yeah, I know. Let's bring it back to Asia a little bit. You've been in Singapore here a while now. We talked about India, the Philippines, Indonesia, Australia a little bit. Once you can start flying again, I'm looking forward to that because I should have been in about 10 different countries by now. Are there particular markets that you're focused on right now?
Yeah. We didn't stop. We didn't travel, but we didn't stop. So we still made new relations, kept the current relations. But yeah, going forward, me too. Really looking forward to getting back on the road again. Then we will mostly focus on the countries we're not in yet, because we also have concentrations limits. So we need to focus on certain countries. I think for the short term, we mostly focus on Vietnam, Thailand, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. Those are interesting countries for us. We're not in yet. Maybe even China, which is, of course, the biggest and maybe the most promising, but difficult at the moment. And then long term, I think we will try to expand across the entire Asia Pacific. So.
Okay. Carst, last question. 2020, unfortunately, was basically a lost year for aviation. This year started out promising, but now it's sort of shifted in the second quarter here. It's still a little bit rough. Any thoughts on the rest of the year with vaccines being rolled out and things like that? And is there a bright spot that TrueNoord is looking for?
I think indeed it started off still rough. 2021 still promised to be a difficult year. I think for Asia mostly because the vaccination rollout is way slower than the rest of the world. If you look at the percentages here compared to Europe and the United States or Israel for that matter. So I really hope that will pick up in the coming months. Otherwise, this will still be a year we spend in our homes here. Other than that, also, I think countries need to unite and focus on a vaccination passport. If we're all vaccinated, but still limited by uncertainty and different rules in different countries, that's not workable for us as a traveler, but also for the entire aviation. So that really needs to be solved. But let's assume that will be solved in the coming 6 months or so. Then we're really bullish. We weathered this crisis well. We got out of this, and I think together with our shareholders, we're really ready to grow our fleet again and really looking forward to go out there and meet our customers again.
Great. Carst Lindeboom, Sales Director for Asia Pacific at TrueNoord. Thanks for joining me in conversation.
Thank you, Matt. It was a pleasure.